Welcome to Dr. Roger and Friends, the bright side of longevity, hosted by three Ps in a podcast, Doc Roger, Teresa, and Danielle. Thanks for joining us for Coffee and Conversation. Skye Bergman is an award-winning filmmaker, producer, writer, and visual artist. She is a professor of photography at Cal Poly University in California, and photo opportunities have taken her around the world, from sailing the Greek islands to watching the sunset on the Adirondacks to standing on a glacier in Alaska, plus Burma, Cuba, France, and other points in between. But perhaps her greatest adventure has been her first film, Lives Well Lived, which premiered at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival in 2017, garnering several accolades and awards, along with a 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Lives Well Lived celebrates the incredible wit and wisdom of adults 75 to 100 years old who are living their lives to the fullest. Encompassing over 3,000 years of experience, 40 people share their secrets and insights to living a meaningful life. Their intimate memories and inspiring personal histories often prompt laughter, sometimes tears, but always inspiration.
Well, welcome to the bright side of longevity, and we are honored to have a friend and very talented filmmaker. I like to call her more a storyteller, and I think you prefer that too, Skye Bergman. And I know you're a busy lady, and we're just thrilled to have you here today.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for asking me.
You know, you've done so much. I can't even keep up with all the things you've done in the last couple of years. But we want to start with how it all began. So talk a little bit about Lives Well Lived and the inspiration behind that movie.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Well, Lives Well Lived really was completely inspired by my grandmother. And I have to say that I teach photography and now video, but when I started this whole project, I had never done any video before. And I started doing video because my grandmother, when she was 96, came to visit me from Florida to California, where I live, for the first time. She'd never been to California before. And for the next 4 summers, she spent the month of August with me, which those of you that have been to Florida or live in Florida know that's a good time to leave and a good time to be in California. And, she was an amazing cook. And the way that she showed her love was really through her cooking and through feeding people. And I wanted to document her cooking because, as any good chef knows, they never write a recipe down. It's all in their head. And she was one of those. And so I thought, well, the way I really can do this is by filming her. And so that really was my first foray into video at all, was filming my grandmother cooking. And she was very patient with me. And we have a little web series called Cucina Nana, and she talks about making lasagna and tomato sauce and all these different things. And when she was 99, getting ready to turn 100, I went back with her to Florida for her birthday, and she was working out at the gym. And I thought I'd better film her because nobody's going to believe she's still working out. And let me just say that she did not start working out until she was 80. So for anyone out there that thinks, oh, I'm too old to start working out, do not think that, because my grandmother's a prime example of starting something new, no matter what age you are.
Never too late. Absolutely.
So when I was filming her on her exercise bike, I just asked her for some words of wisdom, and she said things like, be kind and live life to the limits. And I came back from that trip, and I realized that I had something in that material. And I put together a little 1-minute video clip of her with her words of wisdom. And I sent an email blast out to my friends, family, and all the alum that I've taught over the 26 years I've been at Cal Poly, where I teach. And I said, hey, if you have somebody in your life that's as much an inspiration as my grandmother is for me, please nominate them. And it really, I didn't know it was going to be a film at the time. I thought it would be a web series. And the heartwarming thing was I was completely inundated with wonderful nominations. And that was really the inspiration for the project. All these nominations that came in, my grandmother being the first inspiration, but then really hearing these incredible stories of all these people out there across the country.
Skye, I love and so admire that you had never made a film before and you just had that, you permissioned yourself to be a beginner. And I so admire that in you. And we'll talk about the success of the film. But given that it was your first filmmaking experience, what were some of your insights? What did you learn?
So that's a good question. What did I learn? Well, what I learned is if I could do it, you can do it too. So never let that be a stumbling block. Oh, I haven't done something, so I can't do it. If you have a passion for something and you really want to get something out there in the world, you will figure out how to make it happen. And instead of saying why, say why not? Why not make it happen? Why not put something amazing out there in the world for people to see and be inspired by? And so I think the other thing is I always dream big with smaller goals in between so I know I can achieve them. And I think I had this goal, why I thought making a film, I could get it out there in the world. I don't know, never having done it before, but somehow I had this vision that it was important to get the stories of these elders out there in the world. And that was what kept me going. And I will tell you that one of the happiest days of my life was doing a sneak preview of the film where 27 of the 40 people that are featured in the film were at the screening, including my grandmother. And to share the stage with those people at the end of the film to a standing ovation, I was smiling so hard my cheeks were hurting. And I will never forget that. And I think that it was really something powerful because anytime anybody sees a film, one of the questions I ask is how many of you are thinking in the audience are thinking of somebody that would have been perfect for the film, or you would have been perfect for the film. And I would say almost all the hands go up. So my goal with the film is to connect you to your elders, to connect people to those stories. And I think that that's what's really lacking in our world. One of the things that I found out in the research for the film is that the last 100 years is a first time in human history that we've looked to anyone other than our elders for advice. We look at our cell phones, we look at Google, and I really feel our world is suffering as a result. And so however I can use the film as a way, a catalyst to connect the generations, that's really been my passion since the film's been out.
You're like our perfect person as far as how we paint how someone should go through life. Scare yourself, try new things, do it in small steps, do what you love. My goodness, you're like the prom queen of as far as we're concerned. Well, as you said, the film is about elders. That's rare, and it honors them. That's rare. More it shouldn't be, but it is, and it honors in particular the wisdom they bring. Okay, and that is, as you said, that is not the way our society has been since the Industrial Revolution, I guess. So that's a long time. So what's been the reaction? Do you see people getting an aha moment, or are they responding, or are they? What have you seen?
Well, the reaction I think has been really favorable. I think one of the things that has worked about the film is there are not that many positive films about aging out there right now. And I think here's one that you watch and it makes you feel good. And it also, but it's real because the stories that these people tell are stories of in some cases, some really horrific things that happened to these people. But the stories of resilience and how they overcame those things and how they still stayed optimistic and positive in the midst of those challenges. And I think especially now while we're going through the times that we're going through, their stories resonate even more because you can connect to them in that way. And I know there are days where I get up and everybody does on the wrong side of the bed. And I think about their stories and the things that they went through. And I think, okay, I can have an attitude adjustment very quickly. And, I think of, Lou Tadone has one of my very favorite quotes of the movie, which is, happiness is a state of mind. You can be happy with what you have or miserable with what you don't have. You decide. And so I think that that's been, people walk away with like, that's my comment, but somebody else has another comment. So I think everyone walks away with some bit of wisdom that they hadn't really thought about before. And one of the most wonderful parts of the film, like I mentioned before, I'm really trying to use the film as a catalyst to connect the generations. And I've been working with educators to show the film in high schools and colleges. And one in particular, we're doing out here at Cal Poly with a psychology of aging class where we're showing the film to an assisted living facility and the students in that class. And they used that and the questions that because I came up with 20 something questions that I asked everyone. And they then partner up with somebody from the assisted living facility. And the rest of the quarter, they spend that time asking those questions, getting to know each other. And then we do a big wrap party at the end of the quarter. And the students, inevitably, I will have students that come up to me and just thank me profusely for giving them this experience, because they might not have an elder in their lives. And I take for granted the fact that I grew up with my grandparents. I lived with them. I even had my great-grandmother that I lived with. So I had a lot of that. But there are so many people that are high school or college age that don't have any connection to anyone that's an elder. And what they realize is that there's so many more similarities and differences, and how much they can learn from the experience and the wisdom of the people that they're paired up with. And it just brings tears to my eyes when they do the presentations, because it's just so lovely. And this quarter, where we can't meet in person, they've been everybody watched the film virtually, and then they were able to do it via phone. So even a phone call or a FaceTime or a Zoom time can make that difference, so that people feel connected. And that's been wonderful that project has been able to continue on.
That's so well stated, and such a great response. You know, I think you're an intergenerational evangelist, and I thank you for it.
It's been fun.
Sky, the film has had it's had legs, it's had lots of accomplishments, but tell us kind of the biggest accomplishment that stands out for you so far.
The biggest accomplishment, I think, is that doing these intergenerational screenings, and bringing it to audiences of all different ages. And I think that the target audience when it was in theaters was really boomers. Those were the people that were, I hate those name, things, but that was the age group. But in doing the community and educational screenings, really bringing it to a younger generation mixed with an older generation, and then having those connections happen, I think that's been the biggest accomplishment. And then just one of my bucket item lists is getting a film on PBS, and it's going to be on PBS in May of 2021. So I have to say that's another big accomplishment. Just personally, that's a personal one.
I have my favorite film festivals. I've been trying to work it, but I just didn't have enough insider connection, I guess, because you've been in quite a few, and well deserved.
In a world filled with ageism, Sky, you decide to make a first ever film that honors 8 older adults, and then it takes off in the ways that it has. I think that's amazing.
I always say to my students, and I believe this to be true, and it's what I've done with my short films as well, and anything going forward, is the more personal, the more universal the message is. And so I think because this is so personal to me, and it really started with the love of my grandmother. I still brings tears to my eyes because she's not with us anymore, and I miss her every day. But I think people see that in the way that I edited the film, and the way that I was able to interview people, because the people that I was interviewing knew that it was coming from a heart-filled place of doing this, and that it really was authentic, and I think that comes across. And so I would say to anyone, if you have a personal project, don't think that it's just going to be for you. The more personal, the more universal, the more that message will get out there in a way. And you'll find your tribe. You'll find the people that are really interested and engaged in what you're doing. I mean, I didn't set out to make this film for any other reason than a love of my grandmother. And I think that's what shines through. And now I have 40 new grandparents, because all these people that I have interviewed have become my grandparents. And what a wonderful gift that my grandmother left for me. I mean, I have, I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but one of my favorites is Lucky Louie, Dr. Lou Tadone, who makes fresh mozzarellas. And even in this crazy time, I go over to his house 2 times a week and stand outside of his window and wave to him and say hi. and we have quite the connection. And before all this started, there were a couple times when I was sick, and he does emails. So if I don't go over there once a week, he will email and ask if I'm okay. And when I told him I was sick, there was a thing of chicken soup on my front doorstep from a 97-year-old man. So how lovely is that I have, like, somebody watching out for me like that. I just am so lucky and so blessed that this film has led to so many other things.
And it set you down a really noble road. I know you didn't shoot for that, but it's exactly what it's doing. We can talk and about the value of elders and all that, but what you're doing is, I think, as they say with writing, don't say it, show it. And you're definitely doing that. It's interesting, I think, that we're even seeing it in senior living, but here we're going through something that the last time anyone went through this was in the generation of the ones who were living there. And they're looking all over for ways to respond to it when right in their midst are people who have been through pandemics, who have been through sort of shared events like World War II and the Depression. And, that treasure trove, thank you, because you're trying to tap into it and show everyone what it's worth. And it's so valuable, and we just can't afford to just sweep that away or feel it's not worthy. So again, thank you. So what's next?
What's next? As an artist, I think that you're never bored. My mind is always going a million miles, and I always have ideas. But one of the things that I would love to do a sequel to Lives Well Lived. And if PBS picks it up and I can run with it, I will certainly do something like that. But I think the next feature-length film will be about love, because one of the things that I really enjoyed in the Lives Well Lived film was when people would talk about how they met, and whether it was 5 years ago or 50 years ago, you could see the twinkle in their eyes. And I mean, one of my favorite stories is when Emmy and Bob Cleaves talk about the first time that they meet, and she says, "Oh, and then I saw my soulmate," and he says, "Oh yeah, I saw this blonde babe across the room." And I mean, just the way that they describe it, their differences, but yet they've been together for over 50 years. And I think there is something to the way that they've been able to meld their relationship and make it work. And so that's going to be the next film, will be all about love and relationships. And one of the things that I'm asking people now, because for the trailer for the film, what I decided I was going to do is record a lot of people talking about if you had to describe in one word what makes a relationship last, what would that one word be for you? So you can ponder that.
Well, I'll have to.
I have words.
What are your words?
Trust and honesty.
Okay. Mine is patience. Lucky Louise is mutual respect.
Yeah, been with my wife, so I met her like 55 years ago. We've been married for 50 years. So I'll have to ponder that one.
Yeah.
All of the ones you said are part of it, but I think when you get into the multiple decades type of thing, I think it like a good wine, it sort of it sort of changes and that sort of thing. Well, that's a good one. I'll let you know, Sky.
Okay. Sounds good.
I was just talking to a friend this morning who's been married almost 40 years, and he said he always gets the last word, and it's always yes, dear.
That's good.
So, Sky, in addition to Lives Well Lived, you have 2 short films that are really intergenerationally focused. Can you tell us about them a little bit?
Yeah, sure. And they both came out of the Lives Well Lived film. So they're both based on people that were in the Lives Well Lived film and kind of moving forward. One of them was Evie Justison, I was having lunch with her, and she was talking about this work that she was doing with the League of Women Voters, which she is part of, where they're going into high schools and talking to the high school seniors about the importance of voting, why one vote really matters, and then talking to students about trying to pre-register or register to vote. In California, you can pre-register at the age of 16. And I love that intergenerational connection. I interviewed the students, I interviewed the people from the League of Women Voters, but for the students, what they told me was that this is the first time that they really feel taken seriously. And it's one thing to have a teacher or a parent talk to you, but another thing for somebody from outside inside to believe in you and tell you you have the right to vote, and this is, your civic engagement. And it's interesting because it is that intergenerational connection. I think it really is very poignant and makes a very big difference. And so that's on there's a website called Forever Voters, and you can see it on there and find out how you can register to vote or pre-register to vote. And also the presentation that they do is on that website. So, because now that we're all virtual, it's like a way of the league put it up there so anyone can use it. And then the other film is an intergenerational connection. It's featuring Susie Edo Bauman, who was a Japanese-American woman in the Lives Well Lived film. And she is 100. She did make it to 100. So, because she says in the film she wants to make it to 100, and she is there. And her family gets together every year, the week between Christmas and New Year's, and they make mochi, and it's called Mochisuki, and that's the celebration of making mochi. And I love this passing down of the stories through this intergenerational connection that happens, because all the generations come together and make the mochi, and it's the pounding of the rice and then the forming of the mochi balls. And it's just a lovely celebration that happens in Japan and also happens in a few places here in the U.S. And again, the more personal, the more universal. My brother lives in Japan, is married to a Japanese woman, and they have 2 kids. And on the day I was filming the mochi ceremony here, they were making mochi in Japan. So, I think there's definitely that connection. I love having that connection because it just makes it more personal to me. And it's just such a beautiful ceremony of making the mochi. And it could be, just to whet everybody's appetite, it could be the beginning of another feature-length film, because I love this idea of what do other cultures do to bring people together through food? And especially because my grandmother was the one, food for her was her way of bringing people together. And there's other cultures that she used to make pasta, and we'd all get involved in that. But, in Mexican tradition, it's tamales, and there's so many traditions like that. And so that might be another feature-length film where I have little snippets of different cultures.
I've heard you describe yourself as an artist in residence during this pandemic, and I'm curious, how has that impacted you creatively?
Well, I think that one of the things that definitely happens for me is that there's so many other distractions, and I have not had a lot of those other distractions. And so I've really been able to focus and hone in on the things that are important. And I'm able to still stay in touch with friends. I do a ladies' dinner usually once a month, and we're doing it virtually now. And I've actually been connecting with many more family and distant cousins than I ever did. So I don't feel like I'm missing out on that social aspect of things. But I really, I'm not spending a lot of time doing stupid things that you end up busying yourself with. I mean, sometimes we just fill our day just to fill our day. And I think when we don't have that, and it's like, wow, there's a blank slate in front of me and I can do whatever I want, how do I make the most of that? And so, I've been working on these other projects. I am also teaching 3 classes online, so that does fill a lot of my time. But we've been doing virtual screenings of Lives Well Lived, which is wonderful. And, I'm working on these other projects. And so I think I can focus a lot more. I'm doing a lot more yoga, and I'm actually lucky I am able to walk in my town. So I do get out and try and walk every day. And I think having done the Lives Well Lived film, I feel really lucky that I did that, because I hear everybody's wonderful words of wisdom in my head. And I think that I am actually more content in this moment than I ever have been, because I've just learned to let go. And I hear the words of Blanche Brown, who said, learn to live in the moment. And I really do that. And so if I'm walking, I have learned just to appreciate the light and the way it comes through the trees, or just, really take in each moment in a different way than maybe when our lives were so busy, I wasn't able to do that in quite the same way.
I've decided that I want to age really well, and my program is to follow you around. You're inspiring, Sky. I'm so happy that you were able to join us.
Oh, thank you.
What's funny, and Sky, you told me this on an interview a couple of years ago, that your grandmother said you can always choose to be kind, and that stuck with me. So every time if somebody's being a little nasty to me and you want to have that knee-jerk reaction, I actually remember that and I'm like, I can choose to be kind.
That's very true. I mean, she always said it's always better to be kind, and I think that I have lived my life that way, especially after having worked on this film, is that you have two choices. Sometimes you can be kind or you can be right. Sometimes it's just better to be kind, and I think if you go through life giving out kindness, you get kindness in return. And it is the hardest thing sometimes is when people you don't know what their day's been like and you don't know what's been going on behind the scenes. And so if you're kind to them, sometimes it can flip them into a whole different attitude, sometimes not, but you've done the best you can, and you can walk away from that situation and know that you've done the best that you can. And sometimes just smiling at somebody or saying a kind word can mean so much to them, and you have no idea how much that means to them. And so, I also think the other thing that my grandmother made me do, which I make my students, is practice the art of gratitude and giving thanks. And so giving thanks to people that help you without expecting anything in return. I think the world needs a little more of that as well. A little kindness and a little gratitude go a long way.
So true. There were so many gems in the film Lives Well Lived, not only from your grandmother, but from the others that you interviewed. And you allowed me to watch it at my computer, which gave me the benefit of hitting pause and taking notes, because it was just there were so many gems. And so just such a great film. So moving, Sky.
Thank you.
I did the same likewise. I was sitting down and pause, write that down. I want to remember these quotes. So I have a list of quotes from the movie. Where can people go to both learn more about Lives Well Lived and some of the other projects that you're working on?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So the website for Lives Well Lived is lives-well-lived.com, or if you just Google Lives Well Lived, it's the first thing that comes up. And I should say on the website, there's a couple of things you can look for. One is if you go to our Film Stars page, I picked my favorite quotes from everybody. So if we're not able to write everything down, you might look at that page for some inspiration. And the other thing is that I realized after interviewing 40 people that I had to stop interviewing or I would never get a film done, but I wanted to be more inclusive rather than exclusive. And so on the website, there's a place where you can share your story, and a number of the questions that I asked are there, because I think the hardest part about starting a conversation with somebody is, what are the questions to ask? It's, you just tell me about yourself. It's like way too wide open-ended. And so it's nice to have a starting point, and then you can go off in tangents on that. And for the other films, I have a website, skybergmanproductions.com, and it has all the things that I'm working on right now. So those are the two places that you can look at. And one final thing, which I forgot to mention, the intergenerational projects, if you go to the Lives Well Lived Facebook page or the Instagram page, we have a lot of the photos up for that and some of the quotes from those conversations that happened, which are kind of fun to see.
Well, Sky, you're on an inspirational journey, and I would love to follow you around. You're in every single space that I believe needs that kind of attention, and your message is spot on. I couldn't be happier to have someone who's a troubadour for these messages, and you can count on our support, and we're going to stay in touch, because I know there's a whole lot more to come with you. Thank you for all you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much to all of you for having me and for your continued support. I think the first place that I actually showed the film to an audience was at the Lyceum conference. So I am very grateful, forever grateful for that.
You've been listening to Dr. Roger and Friends, The Bright Side of Longevity. If you like the show, please rate and review, and be sure to click to follow.